The next item on our agenda is a presentation from the town manager about the beach nourishment project. Greg, I assume you have a way that you intend to proceed about this. But one of the things that we do need to address is the alternate 1, alternate 2 question. Yep. And I don't know if you intend to open that up at the beginning of this or make a presentation first, but just let you turn it over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So right, as you indicated, we have 2 items on the agenda related to the beach nourishment: the consideration of initiating the municipal service district process and the request for formal action with one of the alternatives on beach nourishment. So, of course, we held a workshop last week. I think we spent probably 2 hours or so, covered a lot of information, both from staff and consultant on the 2 alternatives and the MSDs. And based on that discussion, I would just go back. There were 2 alternatives that were considered for beach nourishment. The alternative 1 was the FEMA project supplemented with Coastal Storm Damage Mitigation Fund grant revenue. And that would have a total sand placement of about 567,000 cubic yards located in reaches 2, 3, and 4. It also had like 480,000 of town funds as part of that project to essentially fund sand fencing as well as vegetative enhancement. Alternative 2 was the FEMA with the Coastal Storm Damage Mitigation Funds, and basically a town project with requests for county funding in there of 1.47 million cubic yards, and that covered reaches 1 through 4, essentially 10 miles. And we'll come back to that on those two alternatives and ask for board approval on one of those alternatives. So with the MSDs that were presented, the board proposed creating 4 additional MSDs, and they were noted as being, of course, from Whalebone Junction to Bonnet Street to include all properties east of US 158, Whalebone Junction to the southern town limits to include all properties in South Nags Head, from Bonnet Street to 8th Street to include all properties east of US 158, and from Bonnet Street to 8th Street to include all properties east of NC 12. We also know that these new MSDs, depending on the alternative selected, could be taxed at a nominal rate to pay for current planning activities, as well as to supplement the town's beach nourishment fund. So the action that was, I know in our handout, we included the map with the reaches and with those slides. And so the proposed action was to discuss essentially those proposed municipal service districts and have board direct staff to prepare the report, map, and plan for those services, as well as then the follow-up on alternative 1 or 2. And let me hit just a little bit briefly on that. We certainly went over all that information last week. There are, and that's included in attachment 2. If the board desires to proceed with alternative 1, the 567,000 cubic yards project, there are essentially 5 paragraphs that to address. And 2 was so the first one, action to authorize staff to proceed forward with planning, design, permitting. I don't think I need to read through all those, but on number 7, we had some additional language. Action to authorize interim town manager to execute a contract change order in the amount of $195,855 with Moffitt Nickel for the performance of additional geotechnical investigation. That was essentially that inclusion of the geotechnical investigation of the offshore borrow area. And that certainly came as a recommendation from the town attorney to be more specific with that language. Alternative 2, if the board proceed to go with that, was to address those paragraphs 1, 3, 5, 7, and 8. I don't think there's, Mary, anything else I need to go maybe address, other than if you have specific questions for town engineer, finance director in regards to the MSDs or the project.
Well, let's take these obviously separately.
Yes.
The first being creation of the districts, and while the next action is a little more complicated and involves several items, I believe I understand that the only thing that we need here, if we're interested in proceeding with the creation of these, is that motion to direct staff to prepare the study, the maps, and the report that's necessary for the board's eventual approval to initiate those districts. That was, I believe, and this meeting is the critical date for us to direct that preparation in order for us to be able to stay on schedule. So I would ask the board on that topic, is there any discussion first, or Commissioner Cahoon?
Sorry, Mayor, I was going to make a motion, but with one point of clarity before I do. We talked about Whalebone Junction South and Whalebone Junction North. For clarity's sake and to line up with the projects, could we instead substitute Whalebone Junction Gulfstream Street North, Gulfstream Street South? That's an identifiable landmark.
Yes, that would be more appropriate than Whalebone, which is not a actual fixed geographic location. So yes.
And Mayor Cahoon and Commissioner Cahoon, may I interject before you make your motion, please?
Yes, please.
The only thing that I was really looking at with the MSDs was, should we create an MSD for Bonnet Street North to 8th Street and then the Beach Road Oceanward, and then another MSD that includes the entire area as shown? Should there be 2 MSDs, that would line up with what is to the south if we did it that way. If we do it the way it's presented, then I don't see there's a separate just oceanfront from Bonnet Street North for the beachfront.
Right. So that would be a total then of 5 districts rather than 4, so that we maintained basically an oceanfront and west side alignment for the full length of the town.
Exactly. And that's, yes, to me, that just makes more sense. But I'm willing to vote for what's presented, but I just wanted to bring that up and see if people thought that had any substance to it.
Commissioner Cahoon, I'll go back to you first, since you were on the verge of making a motion. What are your thoughts on 5 districts as described rather than 4?
I have no objection to that. The question I have from Whalebone, what I did not see in the MSDs as presented was from Whalebone Junction, or excuse me, from Gulfstream Street to Bonnet Street. It didn't say anything about any properties in between the highways, or did I miss that? Or was that Commissioner Fuller's?
No, the way I see it, that is proposed District 3.
Okay, thank you.
Because proposed District 3 includes oceanfront to the bypass. So if you're east of Virginia Dare Trail, you're in 2 MSDs, And if you're west of the beach road, you are in only one MSD, whereas well, that's how I look at it. If I'm wrong, somebody tell me.
I believe that's correct.
I would yield the floor to you making a motion, Commissioner Fuller.
Excuse me?
I would yield the floor to you making a motion rather than me at this time.
Well, first, before we do that, on the question, since Commissioner Fuller asked what other folks thought of that, Commissioner Sears, any thoughts about that district alignment? You're muted, Mike. Mike, if you were commenting, there
Sorry
you go.
about that. I had the screens all messed up and couldn't get back to the video. I don't have a problem with what Commissioner Fuller's stating on that. That gives them more alignment throughout, like he stated. I was just reviewing back the breakdown on that before I made that call.
Thank you. Commissioner Brink.
I support what Commissioner Fuller said. I like it that it better lines up with what we have existing and what we're proposing.
Okay. Yeah, and I can't, we don't know what the circumstances are, but it does gives us more flexibility on rates going forward, and again being consistent in the way folks are treated. So that would bring us back then to not shutting down discussion, but to a motion for the purposes of discussion.
Can I get a clarification real quick?
Yes, sure.
So on the map, there is a district shown from Bonnet Street to 8th Street running from the bypass to the ocean front.
Mm-hmm.
That is District 6. And then there's also a district shown from Bonnet Street to 8th Street running from the beach road to the ocean front. That is District 5. And so those two districts, and then you have two more, 3 and 4, that would be 4 new districts. And my question is that what Commissioner Fuller was asking for? And if so, then I think that's consistent with what's on the map.
Then I apologize. The way Andy described it is exactly what I was suggesting. And apparently it's already there.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure.
So actually, if you are between the beach road and the bypass, the beach road and the ocean, and you're north of Bonnet Street, you are, if we adopt this, you are in effect in 2 different districts.
That's correct.
Okay, then I'm fine. I'm fine with how it's presented.
Very good. Then a motion to direct staff to prepare the maps study report for the implementation of these MSDs would be appropriate.
I'll make that motion, Mayor. This is Renee.
With your correction to use Gulfstream Street rather than Whalebone as a designator.
That's correct.
Thank you. Is there a second to that?
Second.
I'll second it.
Okay, heard a couple of seconds in there. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, I'll ask you to poll the board, please.
Okay, Commissioner Brinkley, your vote.
Aye.
Commissioner Fuller,
Aye.
Commissioner Renee Cahoon,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Sears,
Aye.
and Mayor Cahoon.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Greg, anything further to add before we discuss the 2 alternatives?
No, I think as we know on those it's laid out the request for formal action in attachment 2 with the amended language on paragraph 7. I think one of the things is we noted from the workshop last week in terms of some of the difference in the two projects. I mean, certainly the alternative one is much smaller, but almost fully grant funded between FEMA and the CDSM funds and small portion of town funds. And with alternative two, we had the loss of about 3.2 million in FEMA funds because of the way they FEMA works that financing. So I think those are some of the things the board was taking into consideration, as well as how maybe these projects potentially lined up both with Dare County funding, the other Northern Beach communities. But I think the fact that with the small project, we could also concentrate the sand where it was needed most, rather than spreading a small amount over a large area was beneficial.
All right, thank you. And I will poll the board, but I will offer, when I left the workshop last week, I was strongly inclined to alternative two, despite the overlapping financing. At that point, I felt as though with the additional municipal service districts we would have, we could handle that. But as I've thought about it further, the thing that really swayed me was that looking at this breakdown that staff had prepared, that mobilization and demobilization was exactly the same for the two projects. So there was no mobilization, demobilization efficiency for the larger project. And with the larger project, without a difference in mobilization, demobilization, we were passing up $3 million worth of FEMA support. And so that really changed my mind at that point. So I circled back around to alternative one as a preference, just really on that basis. To me, it would not be prudent to pass up that additional FEMA financing. So with that, I'll poll the board. I'll go in reverse this time. I'll go to Commissioner Sears.
I agree with you. After David Ryan's talk last week, I left with actually one on my mind, not two on my mind. The return on investment's much larger, and the fact that if we join up with all of the communities in an uncoordinated event, I don't know that the work can get done in a timely manner with the larger project overall. So I would be in favor of one.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Fuller.
I'm in favor of the smaller project.
Okay, all right, thank you. Commissioner Cahoon.
Thank you. I also left last week initially thinking of alternative two, the larger project. And I really appreciate David Ryan's comments after our workshop, after we had discussed what option we wanted to do, pointing out that it probably would be better to do option one and concentrate the sand in the southern part of town. I'm very appreciative of staff's work on both proposals and giving us some guidance. So I would support the first option of one, with the sand being concentrated to the south.
Okay. All right, thank you. Commissioner Brinkley.
I prefer option one, just as for the same reasons the other commissioners do. Thank you.
Good. Hearing that then, and understanding there can be further discussion, then a motion would be in order to proceed. Let's say, do we have to do this in a bunch of steps? I think we probably should. So let's take this. If we're going to do alternative one, then we need to proceed with a number of paragraphs, and that would be starting with item 2 or paragraph 2. That would be action to authorize staff to proceed with the planning, design, permitting, bidding, and construction administration for an approximate 567,000 cubic yard post-Dorian project in reaches 2, 3, and 4. And a motion to that effect would be appropriate.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, you're going to do a bunch of this for the next few minutes. Carolyn, would you please hold the board?
Yes, Commissioner Brinkley, your vote.
Aye.
Commissioner Fuller, your vote. Commissioner Fuller, your vote.
Aye.
Commissioner Renee Cahoon,
Aye.
Tim Sears,
Aye.
and Mayor Cahoon.
Aye. Thank you. The next item would be paragraph 4, which would be action to authorize staff to modify the existing coastal storm damage mitigation grant application to include the FEMA public assistance request and a sand volume of 508,070 cubic yards with a CSDM grant award amount of $1,408,247.19. A motion to that effect would be in order.
So moved. This is Renee.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. The second was from Commissioner Sears. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please poll the board. Carolyn, you're muted.
Commissioner Brinkley, your vote.
Aye.
Commissioner Fuller,
Aye.
Commissioner Renee Cahoon,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Sears,
Aye.
Mayor Cahoon.
Aye.
Thank you.
The next item would be paragraph 6, which would be action to authorize staff to modify the existing FEMA Category G public assistance application to include the FEMA public assistance request amount of 508,070 cubic yards, the CSDM grant award amount of $1,408,247.19. The motion would be in order.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Heard a motion and a second. Who was the motion from?
Mike.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please poll the board.
Commissioner Brinkley, your vote.
Aye.
Commissioner Fuller,
Aye.
Commissioner Renee Cahoon,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Sears,
Aye.
and Mayor Cahoon.
Aye.
Thank you.
The next item is paragraph 7, which is modified. And so that would be action to authorize the interim town manager to execute a contract change order in the amount of $195,855 with Moffitt and Nickel for the performance of additional geotechnical investigation of the offshore Barrow area, investigation for vibrocore sampling collection and geotechnical reporting as for environmental permitting of a beach replacement / maintenance project with an approximate volume of, is that the correct, 1,472,500 cubic yards?
That can't be right, Mayor.
That's not right.
This is David Ryan. We went ahead and put in the maximum amount in there in this item to cover us for either alternative. So it could be modified to say up to 1,472,500. And then there's further explanation further down in this item.
Okay, thank you. Then I will modify that to an approximate volume of up to 1,472,500 cubic yards. At the current time, it is uncertain whether the Division of Coastal Management will require supplemental geotechnical investigation for permitting of the offshore Barrow source. If it is determined that the hydrographic survey and analysis is sufficient for permitting needs, no action will be taken on the proposed contract amendment. if DCM determines vibrocore sampling and analysis is required, the board authorization will permit the interim town manager to execute a contract change order without delay to the project schedule. The geotechnical work will be conducted through a joint effort of Moffitt and Nickel and Athena Technologies. And so a motion to that effect would be in order.
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, the change to this versus what we previously approved for the offshore study of the existing sites, what can we explain that a little better? Or can David or someone explain that a little better?
Yeah, I'll call on David if you're still on, please.
Yes. We had previously requested from the board funds to permit a hydrographic survey. And that survey was to do some initial investigation for the Division of Coastal Management to see if the Barrows area could be permitted based upon the data that was presented from that survey. And so our thought was that that information would be sufficient for DCM and permitting purposes. There is an outside chance that they could require additional geotechnical investigation, and this action item 7 covers us just in case we need the additional geotech work. And so it's not anticipated this work is going to be needed for the smaller project, but it is there for us to proceed with should that be necessary.
So, David, that prior report was part of the information that we heard, I believe, that indicated that the Barrow area had significantly refilled. Was that the result we got from the first study that we had authorized?
We have not received the results from the first study. We just received the survey data last Friday. And so now Moffitt and Nickel is conducting a review and analysis of that data. And so not having that information in hand, there's still some uncertainties. This way, we're covered either way with this action item.
Thank you. Any further questions or discussion? And this is the motion on paragraph 7. Hearing no further discussion, then, and having the motion to approve on the floor, Madam Clerk, will you please poll the board?
Commissioner Brinkley, your vote.
Aye.
Commissioner Fuller, your vote. Commissioner Renee Cahoon.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Sears.
Aye.
And Mayor Cahoon.
Aye. And the last item that we need to deal with is paragraph 8. Additional funding of $220,000 is requested from the Beach Nourishment Capital Reserve Fund balance due to the uncertainty of the need for additional geotechnical investigation within the Beach Nourishment Project Barrow area. Since timing is the critical path for this project, staff is notifying the board of this future request to authorize the interim town manager to execute a change order to the existing Moffitt and Nickel contract for an amount not to exceed $220,000. As necessary, this authorization will permit the change order process to be expedited and reduce potential delays to the project schedule. If the funds are not required, staff can submit a request at a future meeting for an amendment to return the funds to the Beach Nourishment Maintenance Capital Project Fund. So the motion is to request the funds from the capital reserve in an amount not to exceed $220,000 and to authorize the town manager to execute the change order if necessary. A motion to that effect would be in order.
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, will you please poll the board?
Commissioner Brinkley, your vote.
Aye.
Commissioner Fuller,
Aye.
Commissioner Renee Cahoon,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Sears,
Aye.
and Mayor Cahoon.
Aye. Thank you. Greg, is there anything further that the board needs to do on this item?
I guess that question then for the finance director, Amy, on the amendment in the back on the beach nourishment maintenance capital project ordinance, the board need to act on that as well for the budget amendment?
Budget amendment 10.3, because that would actually allow us to actually move the money from the capital project fund. So you kind of need two steps. You need one step to amend the ordinance, which is the amendment 1, and then you need the budget amendment to allow us to move the funds into that fund to pay for it.
Okay, thank you. Right, so you have that budget amendment request before you, and you've heard Amy's description of the what they need in order to act. So a motion would be in order to approve the budget amendment request.
Mayor, I make a motion to approve budget nourishment, but beach nourishment maintenance capital project ordinance amendment. Is it number 1, Amy?
Yes, ma'am.
As presented.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, will you please poll the board?
Commissioner Brinkley, your vote.
Aye.
Commissioner Fuller,
Aye.
Commissioner Renee Cahoon,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Sears,
Aye.
Mayor Cahoon.
Aye. Thank you. And thank you, staff, for all of your work getting us to this point on both the project and the districts. We really appreciate it. This has been kind of a back burner. Well, not back burner. It wasn't that. This has been an issue that's been out before the board for a year or more. It's really nice to pull this to a conclusion. So again, thank you. The next item on.
I'm so sorry, Mayor. May I? I'm so sorry. I just wanted to make sure that amendment 10.3 was also approved by the board. That was the last budget amendment, was the last item under J. It was for a total of $440,000.
So Mayor, that was the item, yeah, right after Amendment 1, it's the budget amendment request for the $440,000.
Okay. Yes, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay, because that's I was confusing myself because that was actually the one I was looking at while we were doing the other thing. So I apologize. So that would be that last item, which is the spreadsheet essentially, which is the budget amendment 10 in the amount of $440,000. So a motion would be in order.
Mayor, I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then Madam Clerk, will you please poll the board?
Commissioner Brinkley, your vote.
Aye.
Commissioner Fuller,
Aye.
Commissioner Renee Cahoon,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Sears,
Aye.
Mayor Cahoon.
Aye. Okay, staff, before we move on, was that it?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay, thank you.